everyone. I'm Elena Armijo, and I'm the founder of the C-Suite Collective. This is a company I created for executive leadership coaching and wellness that supports C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and founders. Now, more than ever, businesses are running faster and with fewer resources. Burnout, overwhelm, disconnection, and disillusionment are the new norm for teams struggling with an old paradigm. At the C-Suite Collective, we believe deeply that providing massive support for your teams through executive coaching and holistic practices will create an inclusive culture, higher levels of performance, sustainable change, and the organizational impact you desire. You can find us at the c-suitecollective.com. What supports people in starting hard conversations? Let's take a look at that in our coaching tip for the month. Today, in our interview segment, we have Nephi Niven, who came from the rich foundation of a creative and corporate career to a coaching practice that helps visionaries and organizations create the future. He is an incredible photographer, an incredible friend, and a brilliant, brilliant coach and leader. I hope you enjoyed the episode today, and remember, something powerful resides within you. I'm here to support you in seeing it and creating it. What supports people in starting hard conversations? This is something we're going to jam on in this episode as you get ready to listen. And I was thinking a lot about what would be a framework or a structure I would provide clients to support in tough conversations. This can be speaking about the elections with a family member. This could be giving a team member feedback. This could be a conversation with your partner. Either way, people looking for a place to start hard conversations, this is what I would offer you. The first thing is have a clarity of purpose. Why are we having this conversation to begin with? What's the intention that you intend to get out of the conversation or walk away with? And think about if you actually want to share this intention with the person. I always think that's very helpful at the very beginning of a conversation. But if you're not clear about what the intention is, take a second to think about what that might be. The second piece is self-awareness. As we enter these tough conversations, we want to be really self-aware with where you're at. What are you feeling currently? If you're really charged about it, or you're still having a lot of emotions flood your body, you might want to take more time to tend to yourself and to the emotions that are happening inside you before the conversation. This takes self-awareness. Are you aware what is activating you? Are you aware if you're still holding something on someone? Are you aware that you may not be able to have this conversation from a very calm, generative, vulnerable place? That's the place we want to get to before you start the conversation. So if you're noticing that you're not there yet, take some time. Go for a walk, write it out, practice it in the mirror, speak to a friend about it. But anything that you can do to release some of that emotional burden before you go in. The third thing is a shared agreement. So when you start the hard conversation, ask the person in front of you, would it be okay if I have this conversation with you? So we're asking permission, but we're also going to create some agreements along the way. The agreement is that we both stay in the conversation, we don't tap out. And if anything gets too hard or too heavy, we'll let each other know and we'll agree to come back when we're a little bit more calm. And we won't leave the conversation until we have a designated time that we'll revisit this. So any agreements that you can create that will keep the space calm. The next piece is vulnerability and courage. So any hard conversation is going to take you being vulnerable and courageous at the same time. So it's going to feel hard. You might be shaking. You might be nervous. You might be flat. You might be detached. But whatever way of being that you're bringing, see if you can tap into the most vulnerable thing that you could say to the person in the moment about how you're feeling and what you're intending to create with the conversation. Come from your heart if you can. And if you can't, just own it in the moment that you're having a hard time dropping into that vulnerability. And then the last piece around this is once you've said what you need to say, there might be some repair. So ask the person, is there anything they need? Do you want to revisit the conversation when the person's had time to process what you've said? Is there anything that you can own or apologize for? But any sort of repair process that will bring you back together to close the conversation and agree what's next from here. Nephi, it is such an honor to have you on my podcast. I often think of the first time I met someone when they come on and they're a guest on the show. And I was thinking about this last night. meeting you in 2015 during my program year. You were in the room the moment I started becoming a coach, and so instrumental in my growth and my development as a coach in the world. But I remember thinking the very first time I heard you speak, how incredibly wise and grounded and loving you were. And I thought, oh my
Mm.
gosh, if that's what coaches are in the world, sign me up. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
a beautiful acknowledgement. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's also worth saying things got spicy. I
they
think
did.
I think I challenged some of the people that you loved in the room, and I remember a little sparking against that, and I
Yeah.
was like, she's cool.
Forever the dissenter in every room.
Forever the dissenter. I mean, there was a bit of you were a bit protective, which I
Yeah.
saw and I appreciated. And we had, there was like a little productive conflict between the two of us that I thought was actually like really beautiful.
Yeah.
But when I think about those days and when I first met you, I was like, this is a strong, you know, protective woman. I was like, she's got a promising career ahead of her. I liked that fire.
We did. I love that you brought that up, because one of the things you and I have continued to build on in the world is teaching people how to be in conflict. And what
Hmm.
a beautiful start for us. Way back when I was a baby coach, I had no idea how to do conflict healthy. I don't know
Hmm.
about you, but what are some of the things that you learned over the years? And even if you want to use that example when we were fighting in our coach training program about me being protective about people.
I mean, I do think that I developed this instinct or like developed the skill, like I'll talk about it as a skill before it becomes an instinct. But like to notice when someone is becoming adversarial, to pause and really like look at the virtue in it.
Mm,
You know, it didn't take me long once I paused, like of course I'm a human being, so like when challenged, I feel the impulse to defend myself and like win the argument and say
yeah,
like, no, you're wrong, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, blah blah blah. But
yeah.
to that pause and say to pause and say like, I mean, she's caring about the people that she brought here. She cares about their experience. She, not only what is the virtue in it, but like what is the strength behind it? Like
Mm,
that you do have that demand for justice, like that fire.
mhm.
And And I think whether or not you decide to kind of like align yourself with me, like I think something immediately changes when you're willing to stop and say like there's good here, even if we're not on the same side of this argument. There are qualities that I admire. There's like something that you're trying to do that I can completely understand. And that's something that I often, I think our roles as coaches are to be the space for that pause. So many times, like clients will call when they've been confronted,
Mm,
and and we get to be that space between, you know, what Viktor Frankl calls, between wait, what is it? Between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space
yeah.
is freedom. Like we get to
Mm.
share that space with people, and it's really cool.
That is beautiful. And my experience of being with somebody who could do that for the first time in my life, instead of either fight me with fire right? Like give me fire
Mm,
back or walk away was limited. I'd never met anybody like that. And so you just staying in the conversation and being with me had a new model that I'd never seen in the world before.
mm,
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your story. How did you become a coach? What do you love about coaching?
mm. Let's see. I became a coach about 12 years ago, coming up on 13 years ago. I had been, one thing that we also have in common is that we came from long careers as creatives. I was a photographer,
Mhm.
and you were a singer.
Yeah.
And, you know, around when I was about to turn 30, I really was like, I don't want to, I love photography. I still love photography. It will always be a part of my life. But I decided it, just because I wanted it to be a part of my life didn't mean that it had to pay my mortgage and that
Mm.
I have
Mhm.
other talents.
Mhm.
So initially, my idea was to become a therapist. As I started down that path, I felt like there was something kind of adjacent to what I wanted, but not really what
Mm.
I wanted.
Mhm.
And when I was introduced to coaching, I it felt like a risk, which was something that, having pursued a career in photography, I was not afraid of. But it felt so much more aligned with my personality. Like it felt more progressive and forward looking, and that you were working on things, not just teaching people to be better at managing their emotions, but like there was progress and there were like projects. And at the
Mm.
end of working with someone, you could say like we did some stuff, like some stuff changed because of the conversations that we had. And initially, I started working. I did a I did a lot of business coaching,
Mm.
and I was looking for creatives, to work with, because that I thought was the most intuitive place for me to work, having had my own business and having worked as a creative. But as I got on in years, like in my practice, I found that anytime I had the opportunity to work with somebody that led a company, an organization, a team, I loved it. I found
Mm.
it so interesting. I found the people in those positions, they both carried the burden of it, but they also like really understood the responsibility of creating a work environment for people
Mm.
and being a part of like how they connected their gifts to the world. I also really like I feel very strongly about creating humane work environments, and
Mm.
that I see like the dysfunction that we like a lot of Western cultures bring to work culture. And working with people in leadership positions, I always felt like I really enjoyed seeing how whatever, like, the work is very intimate, but then it's multiplied because it impacts so many other people than the person that you're talking to at the moment. And yeah, now I work almost exclusively with people in leadership roles.
How fun. And what has it given you to go through that transition and be solidly in a leadership lane now for your life?
I mean, the one of the things that it's really done for me over the last 10 years is, you know, being a an engaged and concerned citizen of the world
Mhm.
whenever things would happen, like,
Mhm.
Trump got elected, pandemic, like conflicts, I always found myself supporting people to not only make sense of it for themselves, but to support others to, not pretend it's not happening, but to find a way to make sense of it that aligned with what they were doing in their professional capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you feel this way, but like working with my clients like kept me sane, through a lot of these big moments in the world. I felt useful. I felt like my gifts were actually helping people find a way through these complex moments in our lives. And yeah, especially, I mean, I just think about during the pandemic, I felt
Yeah.
like at the end of a working day of doing sessions with my clients, I felt so much more grounded than often when I would not have client sessions and I was just reading the news and wondering what was going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. I felt the same way. Yeah. And it was such an interesting experience to see my friends who might be terrified or lonely or craving community and to have worked a full day and feel so full from
Hmm.
service. Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, so what are you excited about now with the clients you're working with? I know through the C Suite Collective and through your private practice, you work with a lot of organizations now that are bringing you in a deeper capacity. So, what's
Hmm.
that like?
Yeah, in the last several years, and definitely with C-suite, I've gone from. I mean, a lot of times I'd have like six, seven, eight organizations that I would work with, and maybe one or two people in each of them. And
Hmm.
then lately, it's been fewer organizations, and I'll work with five or six people, and then really help them come up with strategies on how to better support their people in a more broad way, either through trainings, team coaching, group coaching, training their leaders to be better coaches. And it's been incredibly rewarding. I feel, you know, it's sometimes like when you're coaching, I think you feel like the person that pops in, the outsider that, sits in the
Hmm.
confessional with the person in charge, and then you leave and you like can't, and then you wait to see what happens the next time you come back. And to actually get more involved and to hear what's going on in these orgs. And I work with a lot of like social justice organizations
Hmm.
from so many different vantage points,
Hmm.
and also to be able to think more strategically about how to use the things that we're really good at to shift cultures, to both become more humane and ethical and inclusive, while you know understanding that they're serious about outcomes.
Hmm. Hmm. And what are the conversations that they are in, at least in the US? Let's keep it to US centric. What is the US in right now, given that we're so close to the elections? Are you seeing any shift or change there?
Absolutely. This is where the conflict work really comes in. The ability to hold complex and highly emotional conversations,
Mm.
not to I mean, I think people often think when it gets to a certain emotional threshold, like it doesn't have a place in the workplace. And that, especially in the social justice world, around the conflict in Gaza, around the upcoming election, that just doesn't work anymore. They need to increase their capacity to hold complexity.
Mm.
They need to build they need outside support in holding these conversations sometimes, and then they need better tools, both to be able to create environments where those conversations are productive, and also, like, we've spent a lot of time talking about repair,
Hmm.
which I think is a huge paradigm shifter,
Hmm.
because once people have shared tools, vocabulary, and like a context of the fact that repair is a normal part of of professional discourse,
Mm-hmm.
then they're less afraid to get into these deep conversations and even to engage with productive conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so interesting that that's what we're being hired for now is it could be around any we'll call it a breakdown that could happen in the world, whether it's burnout or stress or culture or even shifting direction of vision and mission in a company, and that the conflict piece is what people are really interested in right now. It seems like is come in and teach us how to be in a healthy conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think really, really great organizations have that capacity for conflict. People and really good leaders understand that it's something that is not to be avoided, but to be engaged with. There's just not a lot of people that have good models of productive conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last year has definitely shown them that they cannot avoid it. It's not just something that, people with high emotional acuity and intelligence can hold, but it's something that everybody needs to be able to hold.
That's beautifully said. If a leader was looking at a place to start this conversation, where might you point them to?
Well, I'm like to the core a practitioner. I have I would much rather talk about what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, and that's why I love coaching. I rather than like teaching change leadership or something like that. I I like to get in and find out the conversations they've been avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
I I like to get personal with them and find out what are the areas that holds both like a great deal of shame for them because everybody's got that button that gets pushed, but also explore like what the possibility of being able to have those conversations are, and we start practicing, and honestly in the beginning it's like introducing the context of conflict as a leadership capacity,
Mm-hmm.
both conflict and repair, but also sometimes in the very beginning, like I I will actually walk them through communication, how to lay planks, how to phrase conflict in a way that it can be heard,
Mm-hmm.
how to use tools like asset framing rather than deficit framing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'll just say, like, this is how I would say it. And they need to be able to hear it, communicate it in a way that's actually like caring and thoughtful before they can envision themselves doing it, because in their own mind it's very charged.
Mm. And how do you support them with that charge piece, right? Because I'm thinking about even in my own studies of that there's a somatic piece in there to address or be within my body as a
Mm,
leader first before going in, but also even during.
hmm.
Does any of that come up for your leaders?
Absolutely. I think somatic coaching is an extraordinary tool, and a lot of times uh, people are biased in thinking that they need to kind of like smart their way into better conflict. Like they need to know tricks that they don't know, or they need to read something.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of somatics, uh, or like working with people around what's going on in their body when these things arise,
Mm-hmm.
are that it's a completely new angle. Like, and it's kind of humbling because as smart as you may be and as hard as you may have been trying to realize that the whole time breath could have made an enormous difference
Mm-hmm.
is something that I think is challenging for people to confront. Like it's been, like the answer has been there. Slowing down. I talk about pace a lot. I
Mm-hmm.
talk about, like locating where you feel shame and as you anticipate conflict and how you can move that energy through your body.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of power in the knowledge of just like what's going on inside of you when you're truly when your buttons really get pushed, like that it takes a little bit of time for you to regulate.
Yeah, and that regulation is key and not bad or to be stepped over or rushed through.
Hmm.
So interesting. What what do you think is possible for the world if we have leaders that are more well versed in conflict resolution and repair in particular? What do you see is possible or emerging?
I mean, that's such a big question.
Yeah.
Uh, so much. I think when I just like look at the world, it feels like a place where it's become harder and harder for people to have difficult conversations. But I mean, I guess just to go back to the humane workplace thing that I was talking
Mhm.
about before, I think one of the big disservices and one of the things that has made, burnout so prevalent and good, talented people have such a hard time sustainably working in the areas where they feel like they can be of most service is that sometimes we default to thinking that emotions have no place in the workforce. Like work should be this emotionally neutral environment,
Mhm.
and that things like organizations or companies are like these lifeless mechanical structures, and they are human structures. I mean, organizations have personalities. Organizations share collective trauma. Organizations have senses of humor. They have their own language and lexicon. And when you give people permission to have things like conflict, it brings more humanity into those spaces. It lets
Mhm.
people be more emotional. And I always tell people, like anger, like we don't need less anger in the world. We need people that are better at it. Like we don't need less sadness. We need people that have like a greater facility for it. And we don't need to exclude these conversations from doing like quote unquote real work.
Mhm.
We need to bring more soul and more life into the work that we're doing, and providing the models for how to do that in a kind way, in a
Mhm.
productive way, in a way that actually supports you know the achieving organizational goals and objectives, I think holds an enormous amount of potential just for people being able to feel like themselves when they're at work,
Mhm.
like feel a greater level of mental health and emotional well-being.
What would you say to the leaders who are still pushing up against this idea that it's a organization's responsibility to care at this level for their people? When we talk about mental health or space or the pause, like we were talking about, right? The pause to figure out where you are in the conversation, or even a values-based conversation. That is a very common place for organizations to start is what are the values of the org, and then how does that look for the values of the person? But there still seems to be a lot of pushback around that takes too much time or any of the other objections you're hearing.
I I find that most of the people, and maybe I have like a self-selecting client group, they understand the need for it, but there is this dichotomy. They're still operating in like either we're pursuing outcomes
Mm-hmm.
or we're supporting emotional well-being. Like
Mm-hmm.
what they there's a common notion that you can't do both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And where I really challenge people and I leverage relationship. Like I'm willing, like I think it's important for me to be able to say like I see it differently.
Mm-hmm.
It models real conflict in our relationship that they can then take out into their own teams. But to say you brought me here for a reason, and I'm going to tell you, from my experience, from my training,
Mm-hmm.
organizations that have a greater level of emotional bandwidth, like that window of tolerance, if it's wider, they are more effective. Like, just to speak to the anger bit, like that's one thing that I get a lot of, discomfort around, because a lot of times people grow up seeing anger used in a harmful way.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us don't have a lot of examples of people that used anger humanely, in a useful way, in a kind way.
Yes.
But I tell them, like, anger is for something. It's not this like random emotion that every single person on the planet has in their bodies. Like, anger grounds you in your values. Like, when you're angry, you say what is right and what is wrong, how it should be and how it should not.
Mm-hmm.
Anger brings a sense of urgency. It's like, no, now, like, this is the moment. And and I'm like, and it moves people to make declarations like,
Mm-hmm.
you will never, or I will. Like, that is the natural expression of anger. And a lot of times I'm like describing this and the utility of anger, and they can really get behind that, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody wants urgency. Everyone wants people that are willing to make declarations, and and people that are grounded in their values. They just don't want the harmful part.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They want to move it and have it be for something. That's so well said. Oh my goodness. Well, this is all beautiful. I love hearing what you're doing with clients, and in particularly with your social justice clients, how this is moving through, because we know in social justice there's a lot of anger, and that this can move a movement. And when it's channeled in a manner that is about humanity, it has a different energy to it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. Well, anything else that you would say to leaders that are looking to start this conversation, or places to look, resources, how they can contact you, anything in that regard?
Oh, let's see. I think, firstly, a lot of times our focus is on conflict and shame and moving through emotional states that are like really challenging. But I always do try to remind leaders that the point of this is is not to just like hang out in those negative emotions. Like, I actually think the work, doing this deep work, is actually pretty fun. Like conflict, when you're good at it, like,
Hmm.
it's really fun. Like, nothing is better than having like a really good argument, like with two people of different perspectives.
Hmm.
It's often funny. Like, jokes are really important in like in this
Yeah,
work.
levity.
And So I do think, especially when our focus is so often on shame, on conflict, on anger, on the things that don't have space, to remind them that this isn't about increasing your capacity just to hang out in awful,
Mm. Mhm.
but increasing your, like, teams that have productive conflict have more, I truly believe they have more fun. They don't feel better, they don't feel worse, they feel more, which means they feel more joy, they feel more gratitude, they celebrate all, even more. The resources that I tend to send my clients with, because like my clients are smart, like they're very
Mm.
smart. So I tend to like send them to more somatic resources. Like let's like get more familiar with our bodies, and
Mhm.
what's happening in our bodies when we're doing all of these challenging things.
Mhm.
Because I think that's usually a less explored area.
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm a huge nerd, so I have like a million resources. Like I'm always reading about this stuff, and so, like my clients are constantly getting like links to podcasts that I just listened to, or like articles that I just read, or like, oh my God, I just like read this book. It's in the mail on the way.
Oh my goodness, that's so
So,
good.
oh yeah, I love buying books. Yeah, and I'm easy to find. There's not, if you put Nephi Niven in the computer, you're gonna find me. There's not a lot of us out there.
Oh my gosh. Well, Nephi, thank you for the work you're doing in the world. Thank you for standing up for humans to be in conflict and have that be okay and find themselves in their location, but also love and joy and humanity. So thank you so much for being here and speaking a little bit
Thank
about it
you.
today.
Thanks for having me.
If this conversation sparks something for you, let it move through your week. Take it with you, take on one small action to move the ball forward. And if you want to join our community of leaders who are daring to lead with courage and heart, you can find that at www.elenaarmijo.com or www.thec-suitecollective.com. I reserve a small number of complimentary 20-minute sessions for leaders who want clarity on what they need and insight into what is getting in the way. The practical next steps that create real movement and results in your leadership journey. So you can schedule a call through the link below. It's in the description. Like, subscribe. Thank you for listening, for showing up, and for doing the work of being human together.